Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Allegiance Group and Pursuant webinar. We are so thrilled with the turnout for today's presentation, and we are excited to get into all the insights that our experts, Matthew and Kristin, have to share with you. Before we get into the main part of today's presentation, however, we're just going to go through a few housekeeping items and a little bit about Allegiance Group and Pursuant to get all of us kind of oriented and acquainted before we get started. So thank you for showing up. As a quick reminder, today's webinar is being recorded, so if you can't stay for the majority of the presentation or you have a friend you would like to share it with, we will be sharing that recording out sometime tomorrow. Within 24 hours, it'll be going straight to your inbox. You will be getting the slides as well. And then if you want to interact with us today, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to use the Q&A to ask any questions you would like for us to just kind of know ahead of time, or to just engage with us in the chat if you have any comments or observations. I will be checking both of those throughout today's presentation, so feel free to utilize them to interact today. A little bit about Allegiance Group and Pursuant, or AGP, as you'll probably hear it shortened to today. We are an integrated agency serving the nonprofit space across a large variety of channels with a number of tools and solutions to serve you in every way that you would need, from a data perspective, a web dev perspective, loyalty and incentives. We also have our public media CRM. So if you have a fundraising need, there is a very good chance that we have something that we can provide for you to meet those awareness and fundraising and technology needs. We also are proud to serve a large variety of nonprofits across many different market segments, whether it's hospitals, public media, animal welfare, food banks, health and human services, faith-based education. We have decades of experience serving you across whatever field you happen to be in, and we would love to work with you, and so reach out if you have a need. All right, I'm going to hand things over to Matthew and Kristin to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin Priest. I'm a Vice President of Client Strategy here at AGP, and I serve as our subject matter expert on mid and major giving. In addition to being a practitioner, I like to consider myself a student of philanthropy and am just fascinated by the story of generosity in the United States, its evolution over time, and how these long arcs of history shape both short and long-term implications, not just for us as nonprofits, but also us as donors today. Matthew.
Thank you, Kristin. Thanks so much, Leah. Hey, everyone. I'm Matthew Mielcarek. I am the SVP of Analytics and Insight Strategy at AGP. My team's role is to help our clients transform data into a strategic asset. And so we do this by uncovering insights that not only explain what's happening, but also guide smarter, more confident decision making. And so the Giving Outlook is a pleasure and privilege of mine and my team to be able to look at broad industry trends and then bring those findings and implications back to you. And so we're super excited to share what we've learned, what we've been talking about. And so thank you very much for making time to be here. I'd like to kick off with some recent headlines that you may have missed in the news. The first one I think is especially appropriate considering that it's lunchtime for many folks, and that is that McDonald's is reviving its extra value meals. Yay! This means you can now get a $5 sausage and egg McMuffin breakfast, or for $8, you can get a Big Mac or chicken McNugget combo. What a deal. McDonald's has recently made these menu changes after traffic among their lower income customers has dropped by nearly double digits. Another headline that you may have missed, but you may have caught it as well, is that Costco executive members now get expanded shopping hours. This is pretty cool because you don't want to get stuck in that Costco parking lot on a Saturday or in those crowded aisles in the middle of the afternoon. If you didn't know, those executive memberships account for about half of all Costco memberships, but actually three-quarters of all sales. And so this kind of perk, early additional shopping hours, underscores how membership models are really doubling down on exclusivity and convenience for folks that are in higher tiers. I've got one last headline, and this is actually less of a headline or a news flash and more of a slow creep. And that's about the introduction of perks at Disney World to expedite visits and provide premium experiences. Maybe you've heard of or even used the Lightning Lane, Genie Plus, virtual queues, or even early park entry. They all sound like pretty great benefits if they're available to you and if you can afford them. And so, what we're seeing here is across industries, major brands are approaching the consumer marketplace with tiered offerings like these. They're offering choice and flexibility across different price points and generating higher margin revenues in doing it. But at the same time, they're also reshaping consumer expectations around belonging, access, and even status. And some economists would go even so far to say that the consumer economy is being pulled apart at both ends, and that the middle is increasingly hollowed out. If we go back to our three examples, those extra value meals at McDonald's is really signaling that everyone should have a seat at the table, even if their budgets are strained. At Costco, many of the other half, remember those other half of the members, may feel second class now, watching their membership and the value of their membership erode, seeing the store being opened early, but only not to them. And then back at Disney World, and I think, this is perhaps most dramatically, many middle class families now feel disadvantaged, where status and hierarchy define that experience and really reshaping the essence of what it means to visit or make a visit to Disney World. So, in many cases today, consumers don't just feel priced out, they feel pushed out. And it's not just from an affordability perspective, but more broadly in cultural participation. So instead of shared experiences, they often now see a marketplace that rewards only those who can pay more, while everyone else is waiting longer, settling for less, or perhaps dropping out altogether. So we've kicked off today with this consumer trend because it feels like the same dynamics may be creeping into philanthropy. And this really has implications for creating a long-term sustainable nonprofit industry. And there's something we can do about it if we act together. And so we will explore that today. We'd like to kick off by unpacking today's philanthropic landscape and sharing a quick view of where we are today, along with the risks and potential pitfalls. First, we've got a little more from Leah.
Hey, popping back in just to share the exciting update that this presentation is a kind of summary of the report that we will be releasing next week, I believe, on September 23rd. Our Giving Outlook is pulled together with data from Giving USA, from the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, M&R Benchmarks, and the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And Matthew and Kristin play a very pivotal role in synthesizing all of that information and kind of putting the AGP perspective on it for you. And so we're just really excited to be sharing the highlights from that today. And I hope that you look forward to getting the full report in your inbox next week.
Cool. Thank you so much, Leah. So let's look at the last full year of industry data that we have at hand, graciously provided from the Giving Institute's Giving USA report. And this is for full calendar year 2024. The headlines were actually quite good. nearly $600 billion given in overall philanthropic dollars. If you look over at the right, it's not an all-time high, but it's really close. And it's the strongest growth that we've seen since the post-pandemic surge of 2021. So it was up 6.3% from 2023. We might ask what drove this giving, what made it such a strong year. Certainly, the world is moving really fast. For me, it's hard to think back those 9+ months to understand where the economy was and where the consumer mindset was. Frankly, it feels like a decade ago. But let's go back to that consumer mindset to understand those drivers of growth. We know that consumer confidence was fairly high. We saw overall 3% GDP growth. We saw a near historic surge in the S&P 500. Unemployment remained low, and broadly, that economic confidence boosted giving capacity. At face value, I'd say that these are all great metrics for everyone, but high net worth individuals in particular had both greater capacity to give and the confidence to do so. And so I think that that becomes really a common thread that we see both in the US consumer marketplace in terms of who is driving the economy forward, as well as philanthropy at the same time. If we slice this growth in a different way and look at sources of giving, we see that optimism unlocked growth for corporations the most. So corporate profits were quite strong. Corporate giving in 2024 grew by 9%, the most of any other source. However, individuals were right behind that, growing at 8.2%. So really strong and robust growth among individuals as well. The reason that individual growth number is so important is that individuals, you and me, by far drive the greatest share of philanthropy at 66% of all contributions. So when individual numbers grow, it translates to significant in real dollars as well. And so that's important. I would note that that individual share of giving is on a long-term downward trend, but by far and for the foreseeable future, it remains where the vast majority of philanthropic dollars came from. So Kristin will take us a little bit deeper with additional insights from the year.
Thank you, Matthew. So while the headlines suggest that this is an exhilarating moment for philanthropy, Matthew talked about some of those near record numbers, almost historic giving totals, those transformational mega gifts making the news, not just in our fundraising publications, but on network news, national papers. We see the stories of extraordinary generosity. We also have to, though, recognize that there is a more sobering reality slightly beneath the surface. While overall giving may be up 3.5%, the number of individuals participating is shrinking. And perhaps most concerning in the long term is that nearly 9% drop among micro donors, those giving just under $100 or our everyday givers. Additionally, after that surge of digital generosity just a few years ago, online engagement is beginning to weaken as well. And as I said, I love to think of myself as a bit of a student of philanthropy. And so taking a step back, thinking about from its inception, American philanthropy has been shaped by the influence of mega donors, from Carnegie and his Gospel of Wealth to Rockefeller, to today we have Chan and Zuckerberg and Mackenzie Scott. Those transformational gifts have always played a bit of an outsized but very important role. This has always existed in balance with the grassroots spirit of giving that flourishes among our everyday donors. If we think about especially after World War II, when philanthropy became almost synonymous with civic responsibility and almost national identity. And so as Matthew and I thought through this and we asked, so where are we today? Is our sector leaning even more heavily on a small number of very wealthy donors to buoy and perhaps steer the philanthropic agenda? Or are we at an inflection point with a chance to reimagine a vibrant, broad-based culture of giving that builds community and this sense of shared purpose? So Matthew and I will argue both sides of that question. But as we begin, I'd love to hear your perspective as well. What do you think? Is philanthropy becoming a two-tiered system? What are you experiencing? What are you seeing in those few big donors, many everyday donors, somewhere in between? Drop your thoughts in the chat Leah mentioned as Matthew and I unpack the argument for both. So if we think about the few big donors, we do see more and more that revenue. It's concentrated at the top. The top 1% of donors contributed over 70% of total revenue at many organizations. Not uncommon or unheard of, but a growing, increasing trend of that reliance on a handful of donors. The surge of mega gifts, those $500 million or more gifts, it totaled $11.7 billion. Those 26 gifts, $11.6 billion in 24, but nearly doubling what that did previous years. And as we said, those small donors are declining. We're overall seeing that decrease, and especially those giving under $100 dropped by nearly 9%. But Matthew, I know there's an argument also to be made for our everyday givers. The broad-based giving persists. Small and mid-level donors have consistently contributed a meaningful share of giving over decades. Digital tools expand access, 40% online. Donors gave via mobile in 24. So we're utilizing new platforms, new technologies, and we are seeing that grassroots giving flourishing. Especially in recent years, small political donations under 200, they made up over 20% of federal campaigns. So folks are still showing up and choosing to engage in philanthropy, in using their dollars to bring about the good or the change they want to see in the world. So what's at stake? While philanthropy can lean too heavily on a handful of wealthy donors, we risk building fragile organizations. They can be shaken by a single change in donor interest or fortune. And when the broader donor base begins to shrink, we lose the very pathways that nurture tomorrow's major gifts, planned gifts, and even mid-level donors. I like to think of those mid-level donors as the spine or backbone of a robust giving program. But I think in some ways the most profound danger goes deeper than that. We risk eroding the sense of belonging that philanthropy has always promised. When everyday givers feel that their contributions don't matter, that real impact belongs only to a few, they begin to step away. And with each step, our movements lose not only dollars, but voices, stories, and that shared purpose. Philanthropy at its best is a community where every gift matters, where every person feels needed and necessary. And if we fail to preserve that, we risk disenfranchising people from the very idea of giving. We lose what makes that possible, that sense of community and togetherness. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, isn't segmentation and personalization exactly the point of modern fundraising? Haven't we said all the time that the more tailored the message, the better results, the more segmented, don't speak to the universe altogether. Matthew, you lead a data team.
I lead the data team. I know. A way I often describe my role as I'm meeting folks is, again, I lead our data and analytics team, is that I help fundraisers determine if you went to a party of 100 people, which five people to talk to if that's the only amount of time that you had. And so to me, that's the role of my team, is to provide insight for how to have the most meaningful conversations with the resources that we have. And the epiphany for me is I was thinking about this marketplace, about the marketplace and where we are today and where we're headed with donor participation, is that segmentation is not really the problem, exclusion is. So if segmentation is dividing us alone, we're failing. But if segmentation can welcome, we win. And what I mean by that is being able to talk to all 100 of those people, perhaps at that party, but doing so in a way that is commensurate with perhaps their affinity, their likelihood to engage, and their capability to engage at all. And so I think the McDonald's example, the creation of those extra value meals, is a way to be inclusive, to welcome people, to engage all people, and demonstrates really the best of doing that by creating an entry point that exists for all, instead of saying goodbye to those lower or middle income customers that may or may not be able to afford McDonald's. So, where does this lead us? We really want to leave you with a rallying cry that's very simple, and that's quite simply to engage all donors. We want to create experiences for everyone and that welcome everyone, not just the top. And when people feel seen and valued at that level, we know that they'll stay engaged, that they'll build loyalty. And so we want to show you how to do that and how we can do that together. But first, I want to look ahead to 2026 to see a bit more about what we can expect. And then we'll share those imperatives for engaging. I wanted to unpack some factors that influence giving and that will influence giving in the year ahead. I know, and I guess I would start with the Fed is anticipated to begin cutting interest rates this week for the first time after they have been held steady. I think it's for the past 9 months. So that's great long-term news. You know, the goal there is really to support employment and bring inflation down. I'm remembering last year during this webinar, the Fed rate cut was announced exactly during the webinar. And I think we may have missed it by a day or two this year. But so many eyes on where the federal rate cuts go. Additional pressures that persist is that inflation certainly continues to run high, around 2.5 to 3% for essentials like groceries, housing, healthcare, and that's on top of prices that are already high. And so that's affecting households, putting pressure on discretionary income. We know that wages are rising for some. For many households, there are real income gains, but for others, income is flat or even negative. And then on top of that, the debt burdens are mounting. So credit card balances have reached over $1 trillion for Americans, and they are significantly higher than they were before the pandemic. So that's showing not only pain, but sustained pain as well for many individuals. I know auto loan debt is climbing as part of that. Income gains are mostly going to top tiers, and lower and middle income households are largely being squeezed. And so, regardless of what the Fed does, in the week ahead, you know, those pressures are going to persist. Those pressures are likely to affect philanthropy as well. Um, I did want to remind everyone of the very big picture, and that's quite simply that philanthropy is very stable. And so this is the chart, the graph that we showed earlier. I would ask you, what year did you begin your career in philanthropy? I think all of us have seen, quite frankly, staggering growth since then. And we believe will continue to do so in the future. That trend line continues if we can build an engaged, sustainable base. I wanted to talk about one more aspect of the year ahead, and I think this will be really interesting. This is a facet called the Charitable Act of the Big Beautiful Bill, and it will allow non-itemizers in their income taxes to take a charitable deduction up to $1,000 for single filers, $2,000 for married couples, and this starts in 2026. So this is exciting. It could help reverse those declines in participation that Kristin highlighted among those smaller donors, among those micro donors. And I think this is especially interesting since 90% of tax filers don't itemize. Some estimates project an annual giving lift in a significant way of nearly $40 billion each year for the next couple of years. But there are many moving parts. I think that equates to around 7% growth. So that's a wild, ambitious, audacious goal. We should all be so lucky if individual giving and philanthropy grows that much through the Charitable Act. But we know there are many moving parts. And so, really, that final impact depends on personal behavior, learning about the deduction, holding on and keeping receipts, and really changing consumer behavior related to how we're filing our income taxes. But overall, the environment is setting up for philanthropy to play an increasingly critical role. And as people find themselves with tighter budgets in the year ahead, perhaps greater motivations will lie ahead when they feel seen or feel like a sense of community. And so we hope that this really impacts giving and growth ahead.
All right. So the truth is, our sector can't afford to be so narrowly focused on major and mega donors. And of course, they require thoughtful cultivation and that careful stewardship, but not at the expense of welcoming new donors and retaining grassroots support year after year. Today, personalization has become an expectation. Just as Netflix recommended the Holiday Bake Off show based on my recent binging of the Great British Baking Show, and Chewy reminds me when it's time to reorder dog food, donors expect us to understand what they care about, when they care about it, when they want to hear from us, and through which channels. Those imperatives. First, surfacing opportunity at every engagement level. So one of the wonderful things about emerging technology and automation is our ability to manage more donors, more of that segmentation and personalization Matthew is talking about. Craft experiences that welcome everyone in. What is the right experience for each of those donors that makes sense for the organization and for the donor and their journey? And bridging those giving tiers. How do we create and encourage movement within the giving pyramid as they might move forward or back? How do we support and identify those who might be most receptive to growing their relationship with us? So this is, first of all, where data becomes indispensable. That first imperative must be to uncover opportunity at every giving level. Every donor has a pathway, whether it's a micro giver with the potential to grow, become a sustainer, or potentially become one of our strongest planned gift donors, or a mid-level donor that might move to a major gift. By pairing first-party data with consumer insights, tools like Giving DNA help us see through those pathways clearly. Instead of guessing, we confirm donor profiles, identify where growth is possible, ensure no supporter is overlooked, that they feel seen, that they're identified. And this is one of the solutions we use at AGP to identify and to track that growth. As Matthew pointed out, to find out who are those folks in the room at the cocktail party we should talk about, and what might be their closest connection. Your mission as an organization is huge. Where might there be their, what I like to call their squishy center? What is that piece that is not just the cerebral argument for who you are and what you do, but what is that soft spot that drove their first gift and continues to drive and move them to your mission? Second, we have to design those experiences that make every donor feel like they belong. That means journey mapping across mail, digital, loyalty programs in ways that honor their current commitment while leaving room for growth. This is one of my favorite things to do, is those donor journey workshops that can feel like a set of chaos and confusion as we map all of the paths through which potential supporters might come to our organization, the journeys they take, and we find those through lines. How do we create experiences that we can manage and automate and that feel authentic and true to the donor? Similar to Chewy. Chewy anticipates, hey, it's been a minute since you got your dog that treat. Hey, you've been buying a lot of toys for your dog. We know you got a cat too. Maybe now might be an interesting opportunity to use this and buy your cat a little treat. And by the way, if you do that in this month, Chewy will also make a donation. So creating these journeys that are both personal and proportionate. No one feels like they're sitting in a second-class seat, a second-class citizen of philanthropy, and in structures that as an organization we can support and build on, rather than try to wrap our arms around and manage 17 different systems that can create confusion and disruption for the donor. And finally, and possibly my favorite, as someone who cut her teeth in fundraising in the mid-level space, it's near and dear to my heart, and I believe so strongly in the importance of creating those bridges, especially around mid-level donors. They are often our most loyal donors and consistent supporters. They often can fall into that gap. It's almost a Goldilocks effect, if you will. They're not small major donors and they're not big general donors. They create and desire a unique space and can serve a unique purpose, which is why we built the mid-level accelerator. Sustain those micro donors, deepen loyalty, fuel the pipeline towards major gifts and planned giving, and done well, that mid-level philanthropy program, it doesn't just raise more today, they become the fuel for growth for tomorrow's philanthropy.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. And I love all three of these examples together. Jumping back as really a toolkit and a way for all of us to sort of act together. Thinking about connecting and addressing really that mid-level within your own organization. The toolkit that we often advise to our clients is really this 1, 2, 3 approach. So first of all, looking at and exploring within Giving DNA, giving at both sides. What are our major donors? Where do our general level donors fall? And what is that potential or opportunity at the mid-level? We then often work through a journey mapping exercise with those individuals. So for these 5,000 people on our file, what is their current experience? Perhaps they're getting our general level treatment. That's great if we're communicating in that regard. Maybe they're getting our major donor treatment if they're in a portfolio, or maybe they're getting nothing and we aren't necessarily recognizing them. And so getting folks sitting around a table through a journey mapping workshop that includes development or marketing and communications, as well as maybe your programs area or advocacy team, helps us to look at those experiences and then finally landing on a refined experience for talking with those individuals really creates that bridge. So now we're getting the best of both worlds, driving increased value on our file and ensuring that we're talking to everyone. And that's really where then bridging the giving tiers comes in, activating your mid-level program with elevated experiences while ensuring that we're still talking to those general level donors so that we're building a pipeline for both mid and major gifts. So I love each of those tactics on their own. And I think we can often find ways that these strategies can help drive growth, but at the same time, activating all of them is a key takeaway that we can each begin on today. So just want to say thanks for that. And we're keeping it short and sweet, but I would close by saying that concentrated generosity doesn't have to mean a two-tier future for us. By seeing every donor, by welcoming every donor, by connecting those tiers of giving, we can build a stronger, more inclusive culture of generosity. And really, that's the work ahead. And I believe that together we can lead it. So thank you all for participating, for dropping comments in. I'm going to turn it over to Leah to open up a little more discussion and share a little bit more about our resources ahead.
Yes, thanks so much, Matthew and Kristin, once again. And as a reminder, you'll be getting the full download of that Giving Outlook report coming up on the 23rd. And I just wanted to highlight some of the kind of comments from the chat and maybe get some of your thoughts. So kind of in the response to the question we asked earlier of what are folks seeing, some folks are seeing some surges in giving, public media, they're seeing a surge in giving. Some folks are saying they're having their best fundraising year yet. And then some folks are also seeing some declines. Some are seeing larger gifts by fewer donors, but not enough to make up for lower donor decline. Some folks are, just kind of seeing declines across the board. And then some folks are kind of in the middle. How would you respond to some of those observations, Matthew or Kristin?
Yeah, I mean, the context is helpful. So we know what's driving public media overall, but at the same time, I think longer term, there are sort of more fundamental challenges as well. Um, and so I think the context is helpful. And I think it is important for us to continue to engage at each level. I do wonder about the board pressure that folks have as well around leaning into one channel or another. I also wonder about the budget pressure as well. So, we've engaged with a couple organizations recently that have talked about pulling back on acquisition programs or ceasing acquisition. And that's really alarming to us because when we talk about almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of seeing those smaller micro level donors pulling back, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if we pull back from them. And instead, our recommendation, again, in terms of addressing broader audiences, would really be determine what the right mix, the right channel, the right way to talk to your donors. And so in many cases, sure, that might mean pulling them out of direct mail, but determine how are you talking to them in other channels from a digital perspective or from a brand perspective as well. And anyway, those are a little bit of final thoughts, but just want to say thank you everyone for participating.
All right. Well, there's no more comments. Thank you for everyone for showing up and for engaging with us today. We've just been so blown away and appreciative of all the engagement and excitement around this webinar. So thanks for being part of our audience and for giving us a 40 minutes out of your Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.